Welcome to New Tracks Meetup, the show that enables modelers to learn model building from MMRs and other outstanding modelers. It's like having your own personal mentor teach you modeling skills and techniques to help you improve your model building and gain confidence in your abilities. If you like the show, please help us get the word out about it through your digital groups and encourage other modelers and your friends to join in. All they have to do is register at our website, newtracksmodeling.com, to get the login links. Here is a message in the chat function you could post to your digital groups to help us promote the show. Thanks in advance for your help. And folks, thank you so much for being here tonight. And we really would appreciate it if you could help us. I've been concerned for some time about the number of people that watch our shows and participate. And if you can help us get the word out, we sure would appreciate it. The security issues for our Zoom are a real concern to me. We were bombed badly the other night. And that's why when you log into the Zoom, Ed has to be able to know who you are, no questions asked. He has to be able to know that your camera is on, that your microphone is working, and he has to be able to actually see a person, and then he'll make the decision whether to keep the people on Zoom or not, because we're really concerned about the security aspect of being bombed because of the other night's attention. So we hope you'll understand. It's simply because of the security of the Zoom issues. We're not posting it anymore to Facebook or anything like that, the Zoom link. We are posting the YouTube link. So if you go to the YouTube, it should be no problem to log in. The Zoom login link only goes to people who have registered on our website. And our website is newtracksmodeling.com, newtracksmodeling.com. And you have to be registered. And if you are, then you'll get an email giving you the Zoom link, and you can come on the Zoom part of it. We have a new website that'll be up soon. We think that it's going to be really special for us, and we'll let you know more about that hopefully next week. We're not having train shows anymore. You may have seen the post that I made on my Facebook page. I've canceled the March show and the May show, and for all of them in the foreseeable future, because I'm just not comfortable that technically we can produce them. And if we can't do a first-class show, we don't want part of it. So I canceled them because I'm just not comfortable that technically we can produce a train show of the quality that it needs to be produced. The next My Build after tonight, I don't have a date for it. TC is going to post on our website tomorrow a request for emails from you, from everybody that watches the show. And the email address is newtracksmodeling@gmail.com. newtracksmodeling@gmail.com. And he's going to make two posts on the website. One post will ask for your input on roundtables. What roundtables you'd like to see us start, people that you would recommend be on those roundtables. The second email is, what would you like to see us do to My Bill to get more participation, more people? Chris tells me we have 7 tonight. That's an improvement, but it's not nearly what we had hoped for. So I'm looking for ideas. We'll do the My Build any way that gets us more participation from the viewers of the show. And we need your ideas. How can we change the My Build that we've done so far to get more participation and make it more interesting and more helpful to everybody? Frank Coach is the National Achievement Program Chairman. And in the last show, we had a lengthy discussion about the Achievement Program. And there were some real issues raised about various parts of the achievement program. So I wrote Frank an email.
In the no man's land, so it's going to be very exciting. I don't know if this is going to be the only overtime.
Hello.
But it's going to be entertaining, and I'm excited to see if Mike Snyder can pull it off here. We are going to get our money's worth.
Ed, can you
out of bounds at this racetrack, so anything goes. Yeah, this is what it's all about. So here we go.
I am sorry about that, but someone.
What happened, Ed?
Someone came on with their mic on.
I know, but did they have their camera on? Do you know who it was?
I was in the wrong view at the time.
Okay, then somebody needs to help Ed with the viewing of this, because I'm really serious about not wanting this kind of bombing on our show. So whoever that was, can you identify who that was?
I cannot identify who that was.
All right. Well, there's nothing we can do about it then tonight, but I really want somebody to watch this very closely, because I'm really serious about not wanting this bombing to come on our shows. Anyway, I wrote Frank an email and asked him some questions. One of them was, if I do a 3D print and I send it to Shapeway, is that a scratch-built item? Frank responded, I don't think Shapeway prints from a CAD drawing. Parenthesis, but I do not know that for sure. End of parenthesis. But they print from a print/deposit file of some sort. If Shapeways translates his CAD drawing into a file that works on their machine, it is not scratch built. If his file goes directly into the machine at Shapeways with no Shapeways interference, it is scratch built. Ed, can you spotlight me instead of keeping it on you?
Sure.
Thank you. Second question dealt with, well, if I can send it to Shapeways and get it printed, why can't I send it to a machine shop and get it printed? Frank answered, if his CAD file goes into a CNS machine and the machine produces a part, it is scratch. If a machinist makes the part from his drawing, the machinist has built the part and not the modeler. Who appoints the regional AP chairman? The region president appoints the region AP chairman with his, Frank's, agreement. The region AP chairman appoints all division AP people and any evaluators for the AP. Electrical certificate. The electrical certificate recognizes DC, DCC, POB. So what does it not recognize? There are many options available under the other category as well. If someone will give me a specific forms of power that are not addressed, we will look at it and modify the requirements. And I'll be glad to send them to Frank in another email if somebody who had that issue can give me specifics to ask him about. But at any rate, those are the answers that he gave me on the issues that were raised about the achievement program in our last show. So with that said, let me turn to Paul Thompson for our quick tips of the evening. Paul?
Great, thank you, Jim. And let me just bring up a quick screen here. Okay, what I'm going to show everybody tonight is basically something that I got in the mail. I ordered it off Amazon, and it's from Kamea. It's a holder that I tried out. I intended it for a plastic kit that I'm going to be building, but I had a look at it, and it will work very nicely on boxcars, as you can see, as a holder. Now, this gives you an idea what you're dealing with. It's a sort of a multi-operational spring that holds things from the inside, and it swivels so that when you're painting or spray painting, you can just sit there and swivel this thing in a paint booth or wherever you do your painting. The bonus is you also get this handy little swivel base thing, which has 4 clips. You can buy additional clips, and it allows you to attach parts, sprues, whatever, for painting. And again, it rotates. Very nifty little thing that I kind of found off of some of the plastic kit modelers and armor modelers. So there you have it. It's called a Tamiya Spray Work. I believe the number is 75422 on Amazon, and it's not that expensive. So that's my tip for the night. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so very much. Glad you got your heater working and that you're nice and cozy and warm up there.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Next, I'd like to turn to Bob Farquhar and his structure building techniques. Bob?
Okay. And tonight we're going to be talking about roofing. This is going to be, most of the layouts, the structures on a layout are below eye level. The first thing you see in most structures is the roof. So we've seen this roof here, this roof here, this roof here. So this is more example of the Bar Mills rolled roofing. And I like the nail hole effect on here as well. The other thing I did differently here, I painted this coloring with the pan pastels, rust color, just be different than all the roofs will not look black or green, like all the same colors. So with pen pastels, I didn't bother spraying this with dull coat when it was finished, and I've never had an issue with it. And you know, generally when you got the roof on the building, you don't play with it anymore, you know, so it's not going to be gone off your hand. So attaching this is all peen on stick, that particular one. What I do is for most of my roof is this double-sided 3M makes this number 465, and it's millions and millions of little tiny bubbles of glue. And when you put the tape down, you press it down and it bursts a bunch of the bubbles, and then it sticks to that surface. And you peel the top layer off, and then you can attach your roofing. It's really good for rib seam roofing or corrugated roofing or even tar paper roofing or whatever. It does a really nice job. And you lay it on there gently, and then when you press it down, it bursts the bubbles more. After about 15, 20 minutes, it's pretty much permanent. You can move it a little bit if you lay it on there nice and gently before you press it down. This doesn't look that good in here, only because I stuck it down on there as a test thing and peeled off the top, and then the bottom tries to come off as well. But so this is an example of cedar shake shingles here. I paint them, I do my coloring this way, right on the sheet, and then I cut the edges off the sheet and separate the shingles. Right, they join here. Right, there's my pointer here. It joined right here. So they have to separate them out. And pretty much when you got them on the building, they're pretty much weathered as they come. And there's another example of coloring. This is the tar paper roofing. That's the effect I get from that. This is a wood roof. This took forever to do this because I have about 7 of these stringers along here when it goes from side to side. And then each board is individually attached and glued to each other, and gives for stability. And this is a board and batten. So the battens took forever to do this. But anyway, the other side's the same way. Now, yeah, a lot of people, the asphalt shingles, they don't know that it's available, and they are. A bunch of the manufacturers out there have them. So just it gives a different effect of roofing. Now, this one surprises me the most is that people with cedar shake shingles put the first layer directly on the supporting, for existence. This one here, it looks like wood, but they put it on there, and the second layer then leaves a gap in here. It's amazing how many models you see like this. So what I do, this is where that's where you get the cedar shake shingles generally on a sheet like this. And this extra piece here on the edge, I just cut it. Doesn't matter how wide it is, so that's not important for the cutting of it. So this is an example here. I glue that strip on here. Then when I put the shingles on, you see there's no gap here at all, neither there. But this one doesn't have it. You see a gap along through here. If the picture was clear, if you had a better photographer, but okay, it was me. Anyway, there's another example. This is an O-scale structure. You can see this really tight in here. The reason why the shingles are up here is because half of that strip is on this slant and the other half is on the other slant. And I just came along afterwards, put a little dab of glue on there and glued them down. But you can see how nice and neat this is along through here, the second row, when you put the first strip along through here. And this is another example, the same thing here and here. Now, what I use, shown this before, this is like a dried peas or dried beans in a nylon stocking, whatever is sewn up in through here. And I use that for almost all my building, all my roofs, because they take the shape of the roof and holds it down nicely. This is a suede roof along and through here. And it's very difficult to hold that in place while it's drying it, unless you put this thing on top of it. It works really, really well. I'm going to mention this one again. This is a glue do not get. It really holds this rib seam roofing really well, but it's once it hits air, it expands like crazy. And matter of fact, you can't see it here, but this has been raised up by the glue, so don't get it. This is the last picture here. This is another example of rolled roofing and also corrugated roofing in there, giving a different effect. So that's it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, next we've got Greg Cassidy and his What's New in the World. Greg?
Thank you, Jim. I will go ahead and get this started. Hello, I'd like to welcome you to What's New, a monthly segment where manufacturers can spotlight their new products that are in development or being released. I'm always looking for new items, and suggestions are always welcome. First, a couple new books from Garbly Publishing. The Garbly Publishing Company is a small independent publisher of railroad history based in Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania. Since 2012, Garbly has specialized in short-run books for authors with unique or niche railroad topics, with over 15 titles currently in print. First is the Conrail Rainbow Years, Volume 3, Raritan Valley Line and North Jersey Coastline Commuter Operations. This is to be released in mid-February, so it's just out. The third in a series of titles covering Conrail's first years of operation from 1976 to 1982, this book features more of the finest in early Conrail photography. The book covers Conrail's rainbow years during contracted commuter operations in New Jersey, when motive power and a variety of patched-out color schemes from New Jersey Department of Transportation and predecessor railroads operated along the Raritan Valley and North Jersey coastlines. A smattering of freshly painted NJ locomotives, as well as other railroads' locomotives that were purchased to alleviate power shortages, added to the color palette. This book features over 140 full-color images of Conrail's unique rainbow years. It has an MSRP of $45 and 90 pages. Next is the Pinsley Railroad Company. This is to be released in mid-May. Since its formation in 1938, the Pinsley Railroad Company has been one of the most well-known owners and operators of short line and regional railroads in the eastern United States. From the plethora of New England roads acquired and operated in the 1950s and 60s to the 1980s and 90s operations in the southeast, Sam Pinsley's railroad empire grew to cover 14 different railroads in 8 states. Familiar railroads that bore the famous Pinsley red, yellow, black paint scheme like the Claremont and Concord, St. Johnsburg and Lamoille County, Arkansas Midland, and Florida Central are all featured in this book. Now owned and operated by the third generation of the Pinsley family line, the Pinsley Railroad Company still exists today, operating the Pioneer Valley Railroad in Massachusetts. This book, comprising nearly a decade of work and research by both authors, is the authorized history of the company produced with the cooperation of the Pinsley Railroad Company. It covers the history and operations of all 14 Pinsley railroads from 1938 to present, complete with maps and never before published black and white and color photography. It has an MSRP of $70 and over 200 pages. As specialists in the railroad marketing and advertising field, the Garbly Publishing Company also offers a number of graphic design and web design services for nonprofits and for-profits alike, as well as photographic restoration and digital retouching for both companies and individuals. You can visit their website at garblypublishing.com or email them at sales@garblypublishing.com. Next is Arrowhead Models. At Arrowhead Models, we view our work as an act of preservation. The Arrowhead brand is crafted to be reminiscent of the storied place railroads have in American history. Presenting the Greenville 2494 Railgun Gondola. Here we have the GONX as delivered Greenville Railgun Gondola and the GONX as delivered with white interior Greenville Railgun Gondola. About the model, it has 199 parts. Arrowhead says we have reason to believe that this is more parts than any HO scale freight car or caboose to date. And as for the comprehensive paint scheme fidelity, we have done something that, although conceptually simple, is quite difficult to pull off. For as-delivered cars, Arrowhead Models has created artwork that accurately matches the lightweight and load limit data on a per-road number basis. This is a market first, and it represents the highest benchmark for artwork accuracy. What does this mean? The convention is to create a single design file for as-delivered paint schemes, and then assign to that file multiple road numbers. The road numbers change, everything else stays the same. The issue is that if the only thing that changes across the different road numbers is just the road number itself, then the artwork is not truly accurate on a per road number basis. The reason is that the values for the tear weight vary with the road number. When construction is complete, each individual car is weighed and the appropriate light weight and load limit data is assigned one by one, car by car, because they are all different. This is what we mean when we say comprehensive paint scheme fidelity. All data is correct for all the cars on a per road number basis. Again, a market first. Additional features: 81 wire parts per car, including grab irons, pull loops, tie downs, coupler cut bars, and many more. 34 etched brass parts per car, including side sheets, floor, end stiffener plates, and more. Brass side sheets on our gondola. Finally, deform and weather without the nonsense of welding a soldering iron and melting plastic. Accurate cross sections for I-beam and C-channel cross members, all of which are separately applied. Code 88 fine scale CNC machine wheel sets and metal axles. Brass formed mounting brackets for the air reservoir, ABD valve, brake cylinder, and guide pulleys. Full top cord detail, including wine drop block 16-13 tie downs and properly spaced and appropriately dimensioned fastener holes. 5-piece classing 1500 handbrake with separate brake housing, mounting plate, brake wheel, release lever, and chain. Scale draft box and details including key, shank, and full bolt detail, and KD number 156 whisper couplers. Arrowhead Models creates fine-scale replicas of model railroad products. See their products at arrowheadmodels.com or contact Blaine Hadfield at contact@arrowheadmodels.com. Next is Lambert Locomotive Works. From Lambert Locomotive Works comes their next ON30 critter. Lambert Locomotive Works is proud to announce that the first batch of our next ON30 critter, the Type W1, is now available. Each kit comes with all parts to make a running DC locomotive, including the mechanism. You just supply the paint, glue, and tools. The kits are $124.90 plus shipping. part number for this kit is LLW LWP16A2. It is ON30 with a length of 2.6 inches, a width of 1.3 inches, and a height of 1.6 inches. This shows the kit's contents. Some serious gratitude is owed to Al Judy for his work on the Type W1 prototype that was sent to him. Suffice to say the resulting build looks magnificent. These are Al's photos. Started in late 2017, it has been Dylan Lambert's goal to bring conversion kits back into the ON30 market. Many manufacturers have retired and left the field, leaving a lack of supply where there is still demand. He intends to help fill that demand. Dylan says the only thing I'll add is to have people check with me to ensure we have the W1 in stock. Visit LambertLocomotiveWorks.com or contact Dylan at LambertLocomotiveWorks@gmail.com. Last, we have Carolina Craftsman kits. Carolina Craftsman kits will be offering the Western Maryland Railway, York, Pennsylvania passenger station. So here's some progress on an impressive project Stephen Milley at Railscale Models and the entire staff of artists and tacticians at CCK are working on. The Western Maryland passenger station in York, built in 1896. Steve has spent lots of time designing it to be prototypical yet buildable by most. A few tweaks and this old girl is ready for production. Get your orders in now for pre-sale pricing. Shipping approximately March 10th. Go to carolinacraftsmankits.com. And if you like modeling York, Pennsylvania, Jeff has a teaser in his Coming Soon section. That's what's new for the month of February. I'm always looking for new products to spotlight. If you or someone you know has a new release, contact me at gcassidy2@verizon.net. Thank you. Okay, that's everything about what's new for February. I'm also going to mention the coming up build along that we have in March. I'm starting this series off with the Gray Street House, which is the company house version by Conrail Models. The next one will be March 3rd, Wednesday night. We already had one session where I showed what tools and supplies I'll be using. The next session that'll be coming up will be the bracing and foundation. And after that, we'll be painting walls, roof, windows, and doors. That's it, Jim.
Okay, Chris, were you able to talk to somebody about offering the O-scale parts for the O-scale version?
I just haven't had a chance to get to it. I just haven't had a chance.
Okay, but they should be able to still buy them from you. I mean, you've got to supply and so forth, right?
Yep.
You want to put your website up?
Sure.
Okay, Gaylord, before I come to you, I want to go back to Bob Farquhar because I forgot to ask him to talk about his build with Blair Line. Bob, can you do that?
All right. Yes, I sure will. So this is going to be the second of the series of build-alongs. And this is the blairline.com site. They're doing 25% off using new tracks as a discount code. Free shipping in the States, $10 to Canada, and $15 international. Available in N, H, O, and O scale. That build is going to start on the 17th of April, which is the week after Greg and Chris have finished their first build along session. Okay.
Thanks so much, Bob. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Now I'd like to go to Gaylord Gill. Gaylord is going to introduce his Bar Mills one kit build. He's going to point out the differences between laser cut kits, show example of kit bashes he's done, talk about how to search for ideas for this structure. I'm really excited about this build because it's awfully close to a total scratch build product. So Gaylord, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Also going to introduce Randy Bosher as my partner on this project, and he'll be kicking in a little bit later in the presentation. We came up a lot earlier tonight than I expected. I hope you don't expect me to fill the rest of the 2 hours, but we'll.
No, you got 15 minutes, Gaylord.
That's what we planned. So we are going to talk about tonight it's the introduction of the project, and we will we've titled it Working with the One Kit. So I believe we are the third build along after the Conowingo and the Blair Line projects. This is a structured kit that is by Bar Mills Modeling. And you see the names of Randy and me. We are the facilitators for this project. Well, we think it's a really neat kit because it is offered in 4 scales. And we'll hope to get a nice participation in this from a lot of different folks in different scales. I mentioned last week, this is a very unusual structure kit because there is no picture on the box of what it's going to look like when it's built. And the reason is each modeler will create his or her own design. You will, if you're going to participate with us, one of your jobs will be to figure out exactly what you'd like to build. Usually with a kit build, you order your kit and you receive your kit and you probably jump in and start building. But we have a couple of extra steps that are be required on this particular kit. And one of them is to figure out what you want to make. There are a lot of possibilities. We will, during the course of the next few minutes, we'll show you what the kit contents are. We will also mention what is not included in the kit because I think it's important to know that. But you're going to have to decide how you want to use these materials. And we strongly recommend that you draw up your plans. Again, the walls of the kit are not pre-cut. And so there's going to be some decision making on how you want to use the materials. And to do that effectively, you really should draw up some plans. Doesn't have to be architectural drawings, but something that shows what you thought through and dimensioned parts, dimensioned components so that you know where you're headed. And along the way, you will have to identify some additional parts and materials, and we'll explain what those are likely to be. And then you will be able to begin your construction. So next, we're going to talk about the kit contents, and I'm going to ask Randy to do the voiceover on this section.
Evening all. Okay, the first page we have here, I'll draw you down to the lower right corner. This is one of those 2 versions is what you get in the kit. As you see on the left side, there's 4 pieces. In the S scale kit anyway, they measure 24 by 40 scale feet. We assume that the others are similar. We don't know that for fact. The reason there's 2 pictures in the lower right, by the way, is that we also don't know for sure which form of milled clapboard siding you get. We and our compatriots have S scale kits that are encompass both. Some kits have one, some the other. So we'll see. Going back over to the lower left there, you can see the scoring lines. Those are laser scores, not cuts. They are modular in nature. Each of those little blocks are 32 inches wide, scale inches. What's maybe not so apparent is that the space between them is also 32 scale inches. So this facilitates the ability to really make a lot of different arrangements of windows and doors. The The appearance is that you can only put windows where you see the score lines, but we'll show you later that you do not. So just from a planning standpoint, be aware that you can move the windows in 32-inch increments. So the next slide, we see you get a fairly generous bunch of laser cut sheets of doors and windows. This is cut in 1/32 plywood, as you see. They are, of course, cut to fit the openings that you saw in the previous slide. There are several varieties of doors. I think these kits tend to lend themselves more towards commercial structures rather than residential type structures. But there's at least 3, maybe 4 different kinds of personnel doors. On the right-hand picture, if you look at the left side of the right-hand picture, you'll see some of the window cuts that they've done. You see them there in the form of a 10-light window. You can make a lot of different modifications to that. You can cut them down to be like a 6-light, 4-light, 3-light, etc., or 2-light. So that's one way of modifying. You can make them into a double hung form. You can put 2 of them side by side. You can also, of course, you could remove muntins if you wanted a slightly more modern look, larger panes of glass. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility built into these things. Even the door trim is cut in an inverted U shape, which you can then trim. If you've shortened windows, for example, you can shorten them accordingly. And the sill piece is cut separately. So you just put the sill on wherever you need it to be. You also get a little bit of strip wood, not a whole bunch. These are all square cross section. You can see 2 different sizes. The larger size is for bracing, and they will probably use up about half of that to make interior corner connections. And then the smaller ones form the trim boards for the corners. And just get a few other little miscellaneous pieces here. Of course, you get some acetate for window glazing, black and white signage. Those of you who are familiar enough with working in the like Photoshop type or editing programs, you could certainly scan these. You could change the colors, you could reverse them. These are all, as you'll notice, white on black, which tends to favor pre-war applications. And I assume everybody here is old enough to know which war I'm talking about here. After the war, they tended to go more towards dark lettering on light. You also get an instruction booklet. Don't get too excited about that. There's not a lot of instruction in there. The first half roughly covers what you need to know in terms of modifying the windows and doors and how to assemble them and so forth, which of course will be covered in the build series. The last half of it has a series of pictures with write-ups of things that people have done with the kit. Take a look at it. One thing that's a little bit weird about this is I'm perfectly aware that there are plenty of people out there watching that are probably better at this than I am, but our target market is not you. Our target market here is people that are not familiar with scratch building. This is a way to just sort of ease it in. That's the point of the closer to scratch building. I noticed in the chat, somebody mentioned earlier that it should be called a bundle. And that makes sense because it really is a scratch build. If you were to build something and enter it into a contest, you don't have to call this a kit because it's pretty much scratch building. As far as tools, some of the other build sequences of discussed tools, nothing here is really special or amazing. Pretty much ordinary modeling tools are going to be able to cover your needs. When we get into the builds, you may see some tools that are particular habits of Gaylord or myself, but none of those are necessary, just ordinary tools. The wall assembly being old school, basically what we're just saying here is there's no like little nice tabs and slots and all that kind of stuff to do the thinking for you. You get to glue them together old school. I think we already kind of covered the windows and doors pretty well. The fact that we can modify and move those things around. So on the last point, you will need to add materials. There is nothing in terms of foundation materials or roofing materials. When you think about it, the point of the whole thing is that you can make something out of a universal kit. So obviously they can't really give you a foundation or a roof. Details that you're going to want to add, like Gaylord's got here, chimneys, entry steps, loading docks, people, things that give it life, all kinds of little stuff. And you will not get a picture of the finished model, as Gaylord mentioned earlier. So what do you want to make?
To give you some ideas, thanks, Randy. I'm going to share one project that I built last year that I used the one kit for as a starting point and added more materials to it. It's a bar and grill. This particular photo is of a grill in Buffalo, New York. It happens to be the region that I'm modeling on my layout, so it's very appropriate. We have both a relatively current view on the left, and also there was I found on the internet a vintage view from probably the 1920s. And I particularly like some of the features, like the horizontal trim between floors, the shingles on the third floor, this clipped roof on the front. It's kind of different. And so I looked at the one kit and I said, maybe this will be a good starting point. And here is the kit that I built in S scale. Now, the sides are from the kit, these milled wood sides. The window frames also came from the kit. You might note, Randy pointed out that the way the windows come, they are 10 lights. I have a set, effectively what would be an 8 light. Excuse me, honey. Susan. Sorry. And I cut out some of the buttons in between to create larger upper and lower part of the window sash. All of the front here is scratch built. So this is clearly not part of what came in the kit. I used various strip wood. I used actually some milled molding that is typically used for doll houses to do some of the horizontal trim. I found some HO shingles that were in a diamond pattern that I used up here. All of the roof is scratch built. Basically made from mat board. Chimneys scratch built. There's a well around this side street actually rises about 5 degrees. And so I notched the bottom of the siding and have visible cement block foundation underneath, and then a well around the side door. So that was my application of a one kit. And Randy's now going to share a kit bash where he started with a kit and took the result way beyond what the original manufacturer intended.
Gaylord, if you could bring that slide back just for a moment. So I wanted to use a couple of features of this to sort of set up the next one. You know, when I spend time coaching somebody on scenery, I have this little mantra about textures and layers. You know, basically, if you think about those long enough, you'll find that that's your answer, your core to developing any kind of scenery. And it also works on buildings to some degree. Now, on Gaylord's building here, you know, the front wall has a lot of texture. It has a lot of things going on here. It's architecturally interesting. The side wall, well, I should point out too that, you know, my build that you're going to see is a fantasy build. This is a prototype build that Gaylord's done. So fidelity to the prototype is informed probably about 90% at least of what he's done here. So the sidewall as on the prototype, the original carpenters, they didn't give quite so much love to the sidewall. And I will point out that in Gaylord's layout, when you roll up on this scene, that is the wall that you're first going to see. That's the one facing the aisle. So what's been done here by Gaylord, you look at the little things that are added to this that bring the, I'll call it authenticity to this thing, and therefore some interest. When you look at this, you feel comfortable that this is what the real building looked like. Little things like the electrical boxes, gutters and downspouts. I love that the chimney has flashing at the base of it, as does the stack vent behind it. The wind braces on the chimney. These things all pump it up. One thing I don't think I've ever seen but one time modeled is the stairwell that Gaylord did. And in fact, the one time that I have seen it modeled is on another building of Gaylord's, which is right across the street from this one. So basically, I guess I just want you to note these things, because when you get to planning out something for this one kit approach, you don't need to jump into making the building itself real fancy. But what you do need to think about is how am I going to make this appealing? How am I going to make it look like something other than a model box? So moving on to the next one here. This is a photo of off of the Motrack Models website. A couple of things I want to bring your attention to here. One is that you've probably seen about enough of what's in the one kit that you might guess that you could pretty much build this building or something very similar to this building using the one kit. And I think this isn't a real fancy building. The roof is about as simple as you're going to possibly get. Foundation is just a rectangular thing. It's not very complicated. You could even put this thing down at ground level, forget a loading dock type of approach, put it down at ground level, more like, say, auto repair or something where you might have to drive inside. So the other thing, well, here's another point too. Let's make some number comparisons here. I can only speak S scale numbers. So HO guys subtract, O scale guys add. The one kit that we're dealing with is, I think, right around $38 with the deal that Art Fahey is offering. So you need a few extra things. So let's say it might cost you as much as $50. This Motrack kit, which you could mostly duplicate, is $100. So you've already saved 50% by building it out of the kit. Now, once you get more familiar with scratch building, let's go back a step further and say, well, we're just going to buy some materials and build this whole thing just out of raw materials. In that case, you're probably talking, no more than $25 worth of materials. And now we're down to a 75, maybe 80% savings. That's pretty good. If an 80% savings doesn't get your attention, then you're probably not a model railroader. So we might have to virtually kick your virtual backside out of the virtual room if you're not really a modeler. So slide on to the next one, I believe. From this kit, by the way, the Motrack kit, that's what was handed to me to build this building. I see the chat there. Yes, there is a discount code. It'll be at the end of the presentation. So the answer is yes. So this was built for the Southeast Michigan S-Gauge traveling layout. Needed to fit a specific space, and by fit I mean both fit within, but also maximize it. We needed some volume to fill the space. Now, from the previous thing, you'll note two identifiable walls. The nearest one, the trapezoidal one, came through the process pretty much intact. The one behind the loading dock, with all the freight doors, slight modifications, but again, pretty much intact. Those are the only two walls that survived. The rest of it, I don't remember if this was donated to us or if the club bought it, but I know it wasn't my money, so I cheerfully chopped it up into little pieces. The result of that is that the footprint of this building is roughly 4 times what the footprint was of the original kit. But here's the interesting point. The actual bits and pieces of stuff that I took out of my personal stock to expand this building probably don't amount to much more than $15, $20 at the most. So we've really gained a lot of activity and a lot of space, a lot of volume for very little extra money. Now, going back to my texture and layers thing, when I haven't looked at this building for a while, and I looked at something like this picture, my eye goes pretty much immediately to the big green roof, you know, and the window area underneath it. But then here's what we're trying to accomplish in a build like this, is to draw your eye around, you know, keep your thought process busy. So from the red roof, or the green roof rather, you might drift up to the cupola on the top. There's another cupola on the side there with the rusty roof. Both of those are sided board on board. Oh, it's over there on the right. We've got a little brick boiler room down there. In the original piece that we talked about. You slide over to the dock area was trying to tell a little story of stuff going on there. And I kind of like the light dark thing that goes on there too with that shield. Yeah. But basically, the reason I'm talking about this one is to get you accustomed to the idea that you can make what do I say? You can make a construct that is very interesting to the eye, but it doesn't take a lot of effort. You know, the actual building of it, yeah, it takes effort, but the planning, not so much. I'll just mention that this particular one, this was deemed worthy of a blue ribbon at a national convention. So the reason I mention that is the next question is why? What makes this appealing to judges? Judges are people, they tell me, at least allegedly they are. So I think the first answer to that is a lot of that activity that we talked about. You know, there's sort of juxtaposed walls, a lot of different types of wall materials. The roofing, there are 6 roofs on here and 4 kinds of material. Same with the walls. There's, I think, 4 types of wall structures on here. Also, you can see a little bit of how we expanded from that original box to this much larger box by mixing different materials. Another little piece of advice that was given to me a long time ago, and I sometimes have a hard time following it, but the advice is relevant to both this structure and the one that Gaylor just showed, in the fact that I was told, don't model things that you can't see. And that's good advice. The back of this building sits less than a half an inch away from the backdrop. So guess what? There's no back on the build. Well, there's a back, but I mean, it's just mat board basically. Same thing with Gaylords. If you could see the back 2 walls, they butt up against other buildings and neither of them is a finished wall. So
Great, Randy.
I'm sorry.
I think that's great. Let's move on.
Okay.
I think we're running a little bit over on our. You want to just mention the?
Sure. Yeah, I'm good at running over. Yeah, these are just a couple of ideas. The book contains these. The one in the upper right, I think, really is a very good visual treatise on what you can do and how the different windows assemblies and so forth can be put together. The other 2 are examples of builds that people have done. Again, fairly simple, not real complicated. For those who are using this as a way to dip your toe in the scratch build water, don't want to get too excited about, diving into the real tough stuff. Do something like this, do your research, get some ideas, get a rough plan together.
All right, I'm going to spend thank you, Randy. That's great. I'm going to spend just a minute or two talking about how you might do some research, because unless you've already got a plan in mind for a structure, you might want to do some poking around and seeing what you can come up with. So internet is our friend. You will find this is a little bit tougher if you're going after a generic building. It's a little tougher than seeking out photos of a specific railroad structure. If you have very tight keywords for a particular interlocking tower or a particular depot, that's going to be an easier search than just finding a warehouse, for example. But try aliases in your keywords. You might think the term rooming house is equivalent to boarding house, but I bet if you put those two in as different searches, you probably would come back with some different selections. Most of us are modeling earlier eras, so try adding old adjectives like vintage or historic in your search. Look up towns in your modeling region. Very often they will have some historic or photos from that town, and that would clearly aid you in capturing that feel. Try specialty sites. If you've never been out on shorpy.com, that's worth a visit. They've got some wonderful old photos, mostly very high res. Pinterest allows you to also do some keyword searches in their site. And generally, anytime you're doing internet searches, go beyond just the first page or two of the returned links. There, you might find some more things that you missed the first time. There's also publications. All of us have railroad books. I happen to find for my use, I'm doing Pennsylvania Railroad Northern Division. They have a book devoted just to facilities within that division. There are retrospective books that show vintage photos. The series by Arcadia is pretty familiar to a lot of us. Magazines like Classic Trains, Vintage Postcards is another source. So let us look a moment at the project timetable for this particular project. We are on the first part of the intro. We're going to do 2 weeks from tonight. We're going to do a part 2 of the intro. We will assume that you have done some looking for the kind of structure you'd like to build. We'll talk about how to create drawings from photos, how to figure out what the additional materials are that you need. We've got quite a bit of downtime between this one and the first of the build. We aren't kicking the build off till April 17th. But once we start the build, it'll be 1 week apart. Each of these is a week apart. And between each of these, we will have assignments for you. So since this is recorded, I won't go over each of these right now, but you'll have this as a reference. So your assignment for next time is figure out what structure you'd like to build. And if you're going to participate with us, order your kit. Here's the website for Bar Mills. As I mentioned, they are offering this in the 4 major scales, N, H, O, S, and O. We have arranged for a 25% off discount, and this is the code that you'll put in when you're doing your checkout. And that code is good through the start of the build program on April 17th. So that is all we have for right now, but if you have questions right for us at the moment, we can maybe field a couple.
Gaylord, if I want a particular siding on the kit that I order, can I order the kit with the siding that I want?
I am not sure. I have tried to find that out from the Bar Mills folks. Any of you are welcome to speak with them directly if you mention your particular scale. Unfortunately, Randy and I just have not reviewed all the other 3 scales. We're both S scalers, and that's what we know. But as Randy pointed out, we had some kits that we've seen that had one type of siding and some had the other.
Well, I know Art is really supportive of what we're doing. So if any of you have a preference, if you want a specific siding because you know the building that you want to build and so forth with this, I really encourage you to contact the company, not by email, but directly by telephone, and talk to Art. I think he says calling between 12 and 4 Eastern time. But I encourage you to do that because if the kits come in different siding and you want a particular one, I think they'll do everything they can to accommodate you. So thank you so much, Gaylord, Randy. This was a great presentation.
Thanks.
Well, now I'd like to go to Chris Course. Chris, start your My Bill program.
Holy mackerel. I didn't think we were ever going to get to it.
Well, we had a lot to do tonight.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for My Build tonight. We have a list of 8 people now that have signed up to present tonight. And we'll start off with Clark. You there, Clark?
Seems now you're down to 7.
No, I am here, but I wasn't expecting to go so early. Move me down the list.
All right, we'll go to Ron. Are you ready, Ron?
Sure, I am. Let me get this pulled up. And all right. So story goes as such. I've been trying to do stuff with model railroading for a number of years. I did it as a kid, and then life kicks in, and now I'm close to retirement, and I'm beginning to really get interested in trying to get back into the hobby. I would go to model train shows and all that, and bring the kids along. And and a couple of years ago, well, 20 years ago, actually, took my son along, and we saw this interesting layout and 2 rather large guys with very, very thick Southern drawl. First one said, you see that fire down there? And then there's a moment, and then the other guy goes, yup. And the kid went nuts. He started laughing like crazy. These guys looked at us, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get slugged here. But, long story short, over the years, son always kept on saying, oh, you're going to go to see that fire down there show? And I go, yeah, whatever. So over the past year, I kind of figured, you know what, he's getting older. Might as well give him something to kind of make him laugh because, of course, as everything, life kind of kicks in, and there are good days and bad days and all that. Now, occasionally I do smoke cigars. And, there are nice boxes that come with them, and, you can use them for all kinds of things. And the nice part is that if you get some of the boxes like this, you actually wind up with Cedar inserts as well that you could use for different modeling aspects of that, So I was figuring, what can I do to kind of give him, a picture of that fire down there? So I took one of my boxes and started playing around with the thing to see if I can put, essentially the model inside. And in essence, this is how this thing looks. And what I tried to do is, go really old school in the way I was trying to do things in the past. That is, you pick up some garbage from the outside, you kind of dry it, you put it in glycerin, preserve it that way and all that kind of stuff. And you use the scraps that you find. So I picked up some twigs and, like I said, glycerin them, had different kits with people, parts and all that. Try to, doll the thing up a little bit and put this thing on some styrofoam because, we got to do something. And you put it inside the box that was painted, and try to make it a little bit dark. So it is as if it is a hobo scene, as he saw at that point when the guys were saying, you see that fire down there. In essence, the darn thing does work. We do have the flickering flame and all that. And, at night, if you go to a dark room, it looks pretty decent. Kid loved it. He was so happy with it. I mean, the guy actually had, tears in his eyes. But my daughter was also an instigator in a lot of different things along the years, and say, you ought to be doing this. You ought to be doing this, Dad. You ought to be doing this. I said, oh yeah, I ought to be doing this. I don't have the time. We're, somebody's got to make the noodles in this, in the family. But she's a vet tech, and she always wants to have a large house when she finally establishes herself and all that kind of stuff, and have a bunch of animals in the backyard. So I figured, you know what, I'll do something for her as well. And put another styrofoam board, got a bunch of different animal pieces that I had from the kits that I had over the years, and put it also in a cigar box. By the way, these cigars, if you ever do smoke, don't get them. They're horrid. The only good thing about them was actually the box. But lo and behold, you put the thing in, the house is scratch. Everything is pretty much scratch built, aside from, they're built, from kits, but the house is scratch built. It's basically is cardstock, scribed it, did a bunch of pan pastel on the thing, put a fascia with styrene, put a U styrene for the gutter, put a little this and that and all this kind of stuff. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. On the other hand, it gives her the idea that you can have something for your own self that kind of reminds you of where you really want to go. And there are little scenes, of course, with her dogs and cats and everything else, and birds and things that she loves to do. So my goal in this whole thing is this model railroading? No. On the other hand, did I make my kids really happy with the darn thing, over a Christmas, gift? Absolutely. Both of them were really happy. And I think in the end, as time goes on, they have something that, Dad did for them. So that's pretty much it. Thanks, guys.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Ron.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ron?
This thing is so simplistic, it's not even funny.
Ron, somebody just commented to me, I think it was somebody in my club, that they found a place where they throw out cigar boxes. So they went and got like 25 of them or something.
Yeah, that's actually it. I mean, you can smoke, of course, which is not hazardous to your health, quote unquote. But on the other hand,
that way though.
Oh, it does. But for $3 or $4, you can actually go to a smoke shop and get the boxes. So they got to get rid of them one way or another, and make a couple of bucks on the side too.
Well, yeah, but I get them for free. I went to the liquor store that sells cigars, and I said, I want all your scrap. I don't care what it is. I want it all. And I go by once a month and pick up a box of cigar box stuff. and a lot of it that I get are the real thin sheets that go between the layers of cigars.
That's right.
And that's what I make my shingles out of for my roofs. I model O scale. The rest of it I cut into strips, and that's what I use for the interior bracing for all my buildings.
Oh, neat. Fantastic.
Those cedar strips also make wonderful HO scale flooring.
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice part about it is they don't have to call the garbage people to get it. All they do is just wait for me. I come by and pick it up.
Quite true. Well, thanks for the tips, and thank you all for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron.
All right. Any more questions? All right. I guess we'll go on to Jeremy if he's ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to put up a slide, some slides in a second here. I've been working on this show for probably a month now or something, and learning a lot. I started in the 60s with some of the earliest N gauge that was sold in this country, and switched to HO in the 70s, and did a couple of basswood kits at that point in time. And then got a bunch of old Lionels, pre-war Lionels and stuff like that. And then 40 years went by, and I kept going to shows. I lived in the Boston area, so I went to basically every And I took my kids along and neighbors' kids to go to as many train clubs and train shows as I possibly could, just to stay in it, but I didn't really do any building or anything like that. Fast forward to more recently, and I moved to Portland, Maine, actually specifically Peaks Island, which is a part of Portland, Maine. It's a 17-minute ferry ride from downtown Portland. And I continued to have an interest in trains, and actually really got interested in two-rail O gauge, as in part because I went to the convention in Worcester, I think in 2010 or something like that, and I got to see a lot of shows, got to see a lot of different layouts and stuff like that. So I'm going to put on this. So what I'm going to show you is kind of like what I've been collecting that's inspiring my layout. And I'll show you a bunch of pictures of Portland, Maine, and the railroads and stuff around the 50s and stuff, diesel steam transition. And I'm going to, so I'll start start sharing here in a second.
So, Jeremy, what's that background picture you're using?
Well, that's going to be coming up. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, because I live on the one of the things, if you've been to Portland, the train tracks run right down the middle of the street. I think there was a double track plus a trolley or streetcar track as well. And some of the pieces of the track are still, every once in a while, I'll take pictures of them repairing the streets and stuff and pulling up rail. And so you can see a couple pictures here, but one of the things I want to do when I build my layout and is try to recreate some of these scenes. So here's some examples of Commercial Street, rail traffic, and also that ferry on the lower right. That's an example of something, and I've got that picture later on too, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. But let me dive into this as long as I can. Okay. So one of my other motivations for doing this was to get my pictures organized, because I have stuff all over the place. And Bill Neal did a great job the other day with his pictures and stuff. But one of the things I did was, just for my own convenience, on the left of these pictures, you're going to see some text that may have come out of the source where this came from. And also I tried to, for my own purposes, kept a link to where this document is. And there's a bunch of pictures from this presentation, which was an incredible presentation about Portland's eastern waterfront. It was done by the Historic Commission, and they were trying to do a planning thing. So if you look at this map here, this is a 1914 Sanford map, or Richards map. It was an insurance map. And this is where Grand Trunk Line came in over here, this freight yard over here on the right. That's where all the traffic came in. The trains left from here going towards the right up to Montreal. And whoever asked about the picture in my background, that's actually a picture looking down these tracks at the station. You can see this station over my other shoulder, this shoulder. There's the station. So that's the Grand Trunk station. And then there's this other building, their Grand Trunk offices. I'll show you some pictures of that. That building exists today, and they've done a beautiful job restoring it. A couple other key points here. There's a couple big grain elevators here that just towered over the city of Portland. All the grain grown in Canada was shipped out of Portland up until 1905. And so it was all of these wharves here were mostly grain shipment. And then you can see all the tracks heading down Commercial Street and stuff. And the ferries came in from where the island that I live on came in on what's called Custom House Wharf. I'm going to keep going here because otherwise this will take forever. This is a picture looking north from the grain elevator. And you can see this is called Munjoy Hill, the factories in the foreground up there. That's the Portland Company. They built those buildings, some of them are still standing. That's being restored now to commercial place, commercial development. They built about 158 steam locomotives, then they went out of business because of competition from other bigger entities in Philly and Lima and stuff like that. They couldn't do it, but they stayed in business for well into I think the 60s, doing castings of all kinds of other stuff, ship stuff, turbines, all that stuff. So anyway, so that's looking north. This is the same picture that's in my background right now. This shows you on the left looking down Commercial Street. That big building that's kind of up there in the upper left. That's right where my ferry terminal is. When I get off the ferry, that's where I get off. And this office building here next to this station, that office building is still there. And that's Grand Trunk, by the way. So the other thing that's interesting that came up in one of the other meetings a few weeks ago was talking about interchange railroads. So Grand Trunk basically ended here. The Portland Terminal Railroad connected Grand Trunk down Commercial Street to Boston and Maine Central on the other side of Portland. And so that they would bring freight back and forth down Commercial Street. This is that station again in a postcard. And you can see the two grain elevators on the left and the right. That's the grain elevators there. And you can see the office building over on the far right that's still there. And this is what the interior, another postcard, an interior of that depot. By the way, I'd love to, and here's another picture of that depot from the back. This was a train taken, let me see, 1955. I was a train headed to Montreal. This is from another really great book called The Grand Trunk Railway Photo Album. I have this book and I just copied it out of that. And if you'll notice in this picture, the tower's gone. They had to knock down the clock tower by 55 because it was structurally too weak to stand. So here's another picture of Commercial Street. This one's really old. This one is about circa 1890. But you can kind of get a sense of the rails running down these streets. I need to go back downtown with this picture on my iPad or something like that. And because a lot of these buildings are still there. I'm positive of it. This is another one on Commercial Street that I really like. And that, once again, I'm not exactly sure where it is on Commercial, but I know some of these buildings are still there. And Jim, I put this picture in there for you because I need you to build me this car for my railroad. This is and over on the far left here is Customs House. That's the when all the ships came in, sailing ships came in with goods, they had to basically go over there and pay their customs. And that building is still there, and they do historic tours. It's basically, there's a few government offices in it, but it's mostly just a historic site, and they do events and stuff there. It's very cool on the inside. If you ever get a chance to go to Portland and go to Customs House, definitely worth it. And if you look at the far right, way down there at the end, that's One India Street, the offices for the Grand Trunk Railroad. I love this picture. This is a picture that I would, if I could try to recreate this boxcar with this family trying to cross the street. There's about 900 people that live on my island year round. And I've gotten to be friends with a lot of the old timers, and they talk about trying to cross the street when a freight train's coming through town and they got to catch a ferry in 5 minutes. And they miss ferries because of the trains. And I'm sure there was some bad accidents and stuff like that, but it's hard. It's one of the facts of life living on an island. You got to take the ferry, but this made it even more difficult. But anyway, I love this picture, and I'm pretty sure that building is still there too. Another one I need to identify. This set of pictures, based on that last presentation about the bar mills, and in 1924, the city of Portland took pictures of every single building in Portland for tax purposes, and they're all online. So I just went on to their website. You can see the watermark at the top. And I went down Commercial Street and copied pictures. I have dozens more pictures of Commercial Street, some really cool stuff. This one I included because I thought you guys might like this stuff. This is not one of those two big grain elevators, pretty sure, but I thought this was pretty cool scene to recreate. Could do something I'm gonna buy a Bar Mills kit. Could definitely do something like this. I've got many other things where I could do it as well. And here's another one, coal. A lot of the coal came in. The coal came in here, and I don't know much about it, but they made coal gas. And I assume that a lot of the coal got shipped up, down east to power plants and stuff like that. I'm not really sure. I haven't studied that much. So I kind of showed you Commercial Street. That's one thing I want to model. This is a wharf. The ferries that I leave from, actually, where these boxcars and stuff over here, that's where my ferry terminal is today. This terminal is called the Main State Pier, which still exists. It was built in 1922. Those pilings are 75 to 90 feet long, going down into the bay. And this presentation, it's the same one that I had shown earlier. There's probably 10 pictures of the construction of this pier. So there's one example, and I put this in here because I'm going to try to model pier. Now, of course, I'm in 2-rail O scale, so I can't build that pier, and I can't build any grain elevators. I can tell you that, but I can kind of get the idea across. There's another one. It's all poured concrete over all those pilings, and some great buildings in the background. There's another one. And this is, they had finished the pier by this time, and these are some of the freight sheds on the Main State Pier. They did, up until 2 years ago, they did really, really loud rock and roll concerts on this pier. So when you were leaving on the ferry boat, you were blasted with this music when you'd leave on Friday nights. This is another beautiful picture. This is right at the end this is where I get off the ferry and walk onto Commercial Street. That building on the left, that's still there. I don't think I have a picture of that. That's called the Working Men's Club. It's just a beautiful granite and brick building. And 1 India Street, that Grand Trunk offices are down there on the behind the freight train. And so here, this is an example. So this is a Portland Terminal Company switcher that was moving this train presumably over to Main Central and Rigby Yards in South Portland. I really like this picture because you can see that building with the arched entryway, Casco Bay Lines. That was the ticket office back when the ferries left from Custom House Wharf. So this is something that I may or may not try to model. It's one of those things that you might not be very visible to the viewer. So, but I love this picture anyway. And so here, I told you before about Custom House. You can see Custom House at the end here. And so here's some of the ferries coming in at Customs House Wharf. And these are all examples. I'm going to buy the Bar Mills kit, and these are, I have any number of options here for building these buildings along the pier. This one's pretty early on. This is 1898. So, and I'm trying to make the 1950s, but a lot of this stuff is probably still there. There's another, it's a postcard, another view of Customs House Wharf. And you can see over across the bay is not the bay, the harbor is, that's South Portland. This is this picture is one I love. This is the smallest ferry boat in the Casco Bay Line history, I think. It was called the Admiral. It'll easily fit in my slip. And look at this picture here with the cars and I'm not even sure what that roofing is above, but if I could kind of recreate that scene, I think that would just be great. However, the good news is there's another ferry boat called the Sabino, and it turns out the Deer River Laser actually makes this kit, the Sabino Casco Bay Line. So I'm going to buy that kit and use it instead of the Admiral because I have enough on my hands without scratch building boats. It would be fun, but I have other things right now. And also look at all those pilings back there. I got to recreate that. So you'll see that in a minute. So how do I weather those pilings? How do I create those? I've already bought 75 feet of 3/8 inch dowel that I gotta deal with. So here's my layout. I hemmed and hawed about building this layout because I have 3/4 of my basement is ledge or bedrock, and it slopes up. So in the way back corner, it's about 4.5, 5 feet, maybe tall, and I'm 6'3". So for me to work up there in that back corner, there's nothing up there. There's some storage and stuff. But when I work on this layout, I have to crawl up under it on my back on the rocks. So it's not very pleasant to work on. But on the other hand, this was useless space. And now I've got a big layout here and I'm having a great time doing it. I started probably mid-September clearing out all the stuff. I built all the shelves in the way back. And then I bought the book on benchwork. Actually, I had bought a couple editions of it over the years and finally used it and pretty much followed it. It's a little tricky when I was building over bedrock, but it's pretty much working. So here's that streetcar picture again. Unfortunately, I don't have a streetcar, but you can see that I have a whole bunch of flat cardboard. So I started doing mock-ups to kind of get a sense of space and proportion and will it fit? Because this whole O-scale stuff, I love it, but boy, it's a learning curve in terms of, the kind of curves you can do and how switches, get in your way and all that kind of stuff. But here's an example. And I put over on the left some of my challenges. Each one of these challenges, in my opinion, could be a my build question. Hey, how am I going to build all these buildings? I need to get all this, it's all brick, down on Commercial Street. What am I going to do with the streets? I got to do ballast stone. That's a photograph of the ballast. It's not cobblestone. When ships came from Europe, they took all this stone out of the bottom of the ships and paved the streets of Portland. And then the ships would go back filled with timber and granite and stuff. So I got to do that. And then here's the One India Street that's been restored on the lower left. I don't know if I'm going to try to build that, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll do a paper model, the clever hands stuff. I've looked at that. It sounded like a pretty cool thing, but we'll see. So here's my little pier. It's going to be a coaling pier at the very least. And there's some of my 75 feet of 3/8 inch dowel. I've been testing out how to distress it. And I'm going to, eventually I'm going to have, you can see some pilings underneath here. So it's going to stretch the whole distance. And on both sides at the far end, there's going to be a seawall, just like there is today in Portland. So over here on the left, I've got a whole bunch of kind of questions to myself about, these are all the things I got to do. I got a lot of work here. It's going to keep me busy for, I don't know, 15 years, you'd say, maybe, I don't know. And this is a second little slip area where I'll do the same kind of thing. And maybe, there's some mock-ups of some buildings trying to see what'll fit. And that's a picture of the Admiral. And I'm planning to kind of keep these pictures there. So when people come and see the layout, they can kind of see what I'm doing. And it's also a guide for me to keep trying to make sure I'm honest about what I'm doing, or trying at least my best. But I got a long ways to go in the model building stuff since I haven't done any in 40 or 50 years. And so that's basically it, but I knew you guys were probably into some other more modern equipment. So I found some additional pictures, a few other pictures of traffic going down Commercial Street that I thought was pretty cool. And this is more modern. This is like 1980s, but you guys might correct me on that based on the age of the locomotive. There's another one, great picture. And the third one. I don't know what those freight cars are. Is that grain or something? Well, I don't know what would be in that. Maybe, I don't know. You guys would know better than me.
Yeah, anyway, those are grain hoppers. Usually comes from Western Canada.
Yep. Anyway, so that's there's a potential there for lots more of my builds. Any questions, or you want to go back to any of the pictures, or have we run out of time?
First of all, thanks, Jeremy. This is awesome. When you said you had so many pictures, I was just blown away. I figured you'd probably want to take and do the whole thing, but wow, in pieces, that'll work too. This is awesome.
Yeah, I did a dry run last night with my daughters and their extended family and stuff, and it was about 70 slides. So I was being kind to you guys and cut it back to about 25, and I've got more than that too. So just these are some of the ones that I thought were neatest, the coolest stuff.
I could watch a whole evening of that, especially those old photos. I'm going to have to go to that main memories site and look at a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a great site.
Jeremy, do you have my email address?
No, I don't. If you want to put it into the chat, I can.
TC, can you put to Jeremy, give him my email address, please?
Yes, I can.
And Jeremy, if you will send me an email, I'd like to talk to you.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Been on and off about streetcars. I'd love to do it. I've been to the streetcar museum down in Kennebunkport, wherever. It's just an awesome place, and they just look great. Unfortunately, because I'm doing O scale, it's hard for me to do both commercial rail and streetcars, but I don't mind running them on the same set of tracks.
I understand.
Now, Grand Trunk was originally broad gauge, correct?
I don't know. I thought it was standard gauge, but I really don't know.
It might have been one of the 5-foot plus gauges at one time, which means if you're running the original O gauge, you'd be correct for the original railroad.
Yeah, Canada, from what I understanding, was 5'6" originally, and the Grand Trunk, I believe, is a Canadian railroad.
Yeah, but in the U.S., well, they ran. Who knows what there was an interchange or something. They had a big facility up at Island Pond, Vermont, freight yard. I think no, that was Boston and Maine. It's hard to keep some of this straight because there's been so many changes over the years. But Maine Central and Boston and Maine and Grand Trunk all came into Portland, as well as 2 or 3 other railroads.
I don't know if the Grand Trunk was built 5-foot plus or if it was built standard gauge. That's before my time.
Yeah.
I mean, based on this, it looked like they did a direct interchange with Boston and Maine going down commercial. So
yeah.
Anyway,
it's cool.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so the Great God Google says that common during 19th century railway construction in British colonies, Grand Trunk was built to broad gauge, and then it was then transferred to a standard gauge in between 1872 and 1885.
Oh, so yeah, I remember when they did that.
Yeah, I still think
there are days we feel like that.
All right. Are there any more questions? All right. Well, Jeremy, that was great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now we'll go on to Jack.
Okay.
You ready, Jack?
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
I'm going to, hopefully you can see this. I'm going to put this up in my Lazy Susan. But this is a BTS Better Than Scratch kit number 28108 that I just completed. It's called the American Flag Company in HO scale. It looked good enough for me to be a stand-in for Cabot Stains, which was a Massachusetts company that still exists and makes stains. I used to travel by their multi-story frame building in Chelsea, Massachusetts, back in the 60s and 70s. They eventually moved out of Chelsea, but I figured this would be a good one for my layout. And I really had 2 objectives in building this kit. One is that I want to really super detail it to try to get some AP points for my structures AP. And then secondly, of course, as I just noted, I wanted an industry for my B&M theme layout. And I'll point out a few things as I twirl around my lazy Susan here. First of all, I try to have every window and door a model unto itself in a sense. So I try to make every window different, even if it's something as simple as having the shades at different heights. But every window that's not blocked has a shade and a pull cord. I use some fans and other type details in some of the windows. You'll notice that in this front view that and I know it's difficult to see because the model is stained a dark color over a gray paint. But I do have a mailbox. Every door has a light of some sort, non-operable. I have some signage. The signage for the billboard and the water tank and the building itself are actual Cabot stain signs that I pulled off the internet. Got a newspaper on the porch. And I'm not going to mention details that came with the kit. I just pointing out added details. You'll notice the electric meter, and I have a gas meter at the other end. I used KC Workshop sidewalk. It's a really nice brick detail. And instead of the rolled roofing, I used some shingles for the canopy to dress up the building a little bit over the main entry. I have numbers. A lot of folks forget to use numbers, but I have a building number for the mailman. So those are a few of the details that I just have on the front. I'm going to move over to, in this oddly shaped building, moving over to the wide end of it. I have a woman hanging out the window and creating a little mini scene, and she's yelling at the carpenter below to get out of the way of the freight, the truck loading dock, because there's a delivery on its way. And you can see I've added some downspouts. There's one in each corner. And again, you get a sense of each of the windows is modeled a little bit differently. And each of the loading docks has some extra detail added. I've got quite a bit of detail that I loaded into the backside where I have 2 freight doors. I used a great video from Jason Jensen to replicate his rusting effects on the metal roofing. Is very difficult to see in this video, but trust me when I tell you that I don't have any cigars, but I have both of the workers on the back dock on a smoke break. Each of them has a cigarette. One has a cigarette in his mouth, the other has a cigarette in his hand, and used a tiny bit of cotton to replicate smoke at the end of the cigarette. One of the cigarettes I even had a little dot of red paint at the end of the styrene rod to represent a little bit of a burning ash. So those are some of the details on the backside that are not quite that are not with the kit. I'd like to move to the narrow end of this odd-shaped building. I had a very long ladder in my scrap box. I have no idea where it came from, but I decided to make an extension ladder. So I cut it in 2 to make it look a bit like an extension ladder instead of one long plastic ladder. And something that I thought you might be interested in is I created the rope effect, if you can see it, but there's a rope to extend that ladder. And what I used is very fine thread. And I'll show you the product that I got from my wife. It's Serial Magic fabric stabilizer.
Can't quite see it, Jack.
There you go. It comes in a spray bottle. Also, you can use it directly out of the refill bottle as well. But I essentially painted a long piece of sewing thread, fine thread, and it just stiffened that piece of thread. And then I bent it up over the top rung or second to the top rung, brought it down, a dot of super glue, and I've got a nice rope around to hoist up my extension ladder. So I thought that was a nice detail that you probably don't see very often. Also point out, I tried to have a mini scene as well, because we all look at roofs. Some of the presenters have talked about roofs before. So I've got the pigeon excrement on the water tank and of course on the billboard. And I've got a couple of workers on the roof as well. Now, each of the downspouts that I put on each corner needed some drainage. So I used some scrap sprue material to create a drainage grate on each of the four corners of the roof deck. So that roof water's got someplace to go and the downspouts are where it went. So gentlemen, there's some super detailing on my recent structure. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. That's awesome. That's a lot of things to think about, you know, on this. So I hope that's something that will inspire other people to add extra here and there.
Jack, that's beautiful. I mean, I've seen your work before, but I've never seen when you really put your heart into something like this. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you.
There was a question about what your glass is.
Say that again.
What did you use for window glass?
Oh, that's just acetate.
Oh, okay.
But on a couple of the panes, I believe up here, I just took some City Classics warehouse blocking type broken window panes that I had. I cut those out and I used those on a couple of windows, but for the most part, it's all acetate.
All right, thank you.
Jack, how did you make your shades, particularly the pulls?
Oh, that the pulls are very thin styrene rod, and I just glued them to the back of manila folders.
Got it.
Usually I paint my shades on my acetate windows. However, if you're into the NMRA and having your structures evaluated, you want to have as much detail, added detail as possible to your kits. Well, I don't get any really extra credit except for maybe painting and lettering for painting on window shades. So I thought I'd build up my piece count by adding shades. There are 39 windows in this structure. So that's a lot of extra parts that I was able to accumulate by doing that.
Yeah. Very nice.
How many hours did it take you to make this?
Oh, I'm gonna guess that I've got probably a full week into it, maybe 40 hours.
Wow.
It's pretty intense there.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Jack. It's a beautiful building.
Yeah,
thank you. Let's hope I get 88 points out of it.
You'll get 89.
You get 100 from us, Jack.
That sounds good.
All right. Any more questions for Jack? All right. Well, I guess we'll thank Jack, and we will move on to Bob Farquhar. You ready, Bob?
Well, I decided I'm going to build an O-scale toothpick factory from scratch. This is going to be how I'm going to start. So that's what I'm starting with. I figured 45 years from now, probably have enough wood to build a factory. So just thought I'd share that with you.
I thought it was a reference to the Curse of Oak Island. How they call everybody acorns.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember you said there was a joke to it. Okay. All
That's
right.
considered planning ahead.
You can get that building quicker if you do it in T scale. What is that, 1 to 450 or something like that?
It'd be something like that.
Alrighty. If there's no more questions for Bob. Thanks, Bob. We needed a good laugh. So let's move on to Darren Lloyd. You ready there, Darren? See if he's up.
Yeah, I'm coming.
All right.
Sorry. I stepped out of the office for 2 seconds and go figure.
That's why you leave the camera on, because then we'll know that you're not there.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll remember that. Now this how do I
go to slideshow and go to first slide?
Where's slide? Where?
No. Go up.
Yeah. Home.
Now go keep going. One more.
Go to the bottom corner, bottom right corner.
Right corner. Yeah, because I got stuff at the top of my screen I can't see. Hold on.
Yeah, if you go to the projector screen in the lower right, it'll
here.
Right before the slide bar.
Right, yeah, right next to where it says 55%
There.
on the left of it.
Okay, my build is what I have to build. After many designs and layout changes, I finally came up with a design that works. I'm going to have a town on the one wall of the, on 2 walls of my basement, and the steel mill area. The curve, which you'll see in a second, in the downtown will be lower, and the track will go over a viaduct and a bridge, kind of like what we have in town here where I live. This is my railroad room, or the cupboards below the railroad room. I figured I only need it from about 48 inches up. I'm 6'7", so I didn't need to be on the ground. So I put IKEA, just standard IKEA cupboards around the wall, around the room for storage. I'd show you the picture above it, but it's covered in railroad stuff that I need to build. This is the whole layout. So I got cupboards all over here, and this is the big steel mill area. This is where my downtown will be lower than the, it'll come down off these 2 modules. The 2 modules, because I belong to a Fremo group, these modules will double for Fremo. So it'll be basically a little town with some industrial on either side, and then I'll build a transition module from my home modules so I can plug into the Fremo spec. This will be my steel mill. This main area is 4x6. And then this kind of is the rolling mills, and I'll have a car shop. My high line will be here. My blast furnaces will be here. My coke oven will be here. My byproduct plant will be here. Now, this is about my 10th master plan, and I've done more versions of this than I can remember. Clark and Paul both can, I've been working on this for 10 years. We've been in the house since 2010, and I claimed a quarter of the basement. We live in a small bungalow, so I got about a 12 by 13 room, and I'm going to jam as much stuff into it as I can. There's all the wood for the top of the modules. I made a frame, a jig and a frame for our modules. This is standard Fremo HO scale. Paul Thompson and another friend helped me build this. there's a half frame jig so that if I make it longer, I can use this, or it made sense. And then this is what the frame, the modules will look like. And I will just make this sort of thing in a bigger scale for the 4x6 module. And that's it.
Cool. Looks like you're off to a great start there.
Well, it's only taken me 10 years to get to that point. So, but now that I'm involved with you guys, I'm like, oh, geez, I gotta get going on this. So I can keep doing my build and show you the progress, because
That's right. We need more material.
I'm working on it. Next month, maybe not next month, but once it warms up here, we'll be able to get out in the shop and keep working. So that's it for tonight.
All righty. Are there any questions for Darren?
Yeah, Darren, question. What leg connections are you planning to use to the top of the modular?
Well, the modules are just going to sit right on the cupboards. So
gotcha.
At home, there will be no legs. It'll just sit right on, like I didn't show you, because the top of the cabinets are just full of model stuff. Like it's literally 2 feet of stuff from where the picture, and I'm like, that's too embarrassing to show. So
gotcha.
I'm just going to put the modules right on the bench work, right on the cupboards. I've designed them so that they, like, I started out with IKEA cabinets, but I've kind of tweaked them to my own use. So once I clear that up, I'll be able to show that in my next submission. But right now, it's just way too much stuff. You'd never see any of the details. But the top cabinet, I added that on to get me up to my height, and it's basically open. So I have doors, but it's all open behind. So so I can store long stuff in there, so it just, because I should have went with taller cabinets. I should have bought pantries and cut them in half, but I didn't. I just went standard. So then I ended up with being low. So I bought some more doors, because the IKEA white doors, I don't know what they are like in the States, but up here, they're $5 to $10 a piece. So you can't build a door for that. So I just went and bought a bunch of their doors and just kind of tweaked it. And I've used some of their doors out in the shop too. And yeah, so they're great, cheap doors. And I mean, you want to basically hide it. You don't want to put a bunch of money into cabinet doors. So.
Well, I have heard that a true model railroader builds his layout on top of all the unbuilt kits that he has.
Oh, no, you put them under it.
Yeah. So there's no more questions. That's it for me, Chris.
All righty. Thanks, Darren. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you're off to a good start.
Yep. And now we're on to Jim Murphy.
Well, thank you very much. And I am going to make sure I hit share screen here. And there is what I want to share. Okay, I got to share computer sound as well. Then share. Okay, I should be up, and here we are. Ready. There we go. Anyway, I'm Jim Murphy. I'm from Western Massachusetts, and this is my hometown railroad station. Back when I was in the early 60s, we would travel on the B&M to all over the Northeast, because where we had public transportation, and the rails was our way of going to visit people. And we went in and out of a station that was designed by the architect H.H. Richardson. He was famous for his Romanesque design, which consisted of brownstone and granite and these very unique columns that were modeled after Egyptian Ithacanthus. But this was 1887. And fortunately, that station still stands today. Back a number of years ago, a couple of 8th grade kids that had joined their first model railroad club said to themselves during class, when we weren't supposed to be doing it, we've got to build a model of this station. Well, one of the guys was a bit of an artist, so he got the idea of sketching it up and taking notes and doing our design for us, and took photos with his Kodak Brownie. And the other kid was a slug, and he took all that information and then moved to the South and put it on the shelf for 20 years, and saying someday he's going to get around to building the station model. Well, finally we got to planning. And planning any major endeavor is the first thing you do is research your subject, gather up all the information, get photos and sketches of the prototype, which sometimes your friend will do for you, document all the steps, and you look for articles, magazines, drawings, you make notes, postcards, and you find photos, you take your own photos. And sometimes you can find postcards from back in the day, or when you get back home, you take some of your own photographs, and that you pull all that information together. The second phase of planning is to really start digging in. You start asking questions, you look online, you search the internet for photos. My compliments to Gaylord, because you listed some excellent sources of information for finding old stations and old railroad history. You try to find unique features of the prototype, which sometimes will help you, because the historical societies can be infinitely helpful, especially in this case, the Boston and Maine Historical Society. Thank you, Jack Jottle. But even growing up a few blocks from the prototype, you still can't beat what the Historical Society has. This particular station was kind of unique, being, okay, it's the Northeast, but you'll notice that there is a immigrants room. There's a ladies' room, a central waiting room for the general public, and immigrants. So all you Eastern and Western European ethnic types, you Irish, you Scotch, you Poles, you Jews, you Italians, we're all in the immigrants room. We can all relate to that. So in 1887, the Railroad Gazette published a plan of the Connecticut River Railroad Station, which was a pretty good working plan for what the station would look like on the interior, which was a good clue to get started on the project. So years later, this other 8th grade kid was also able to get into the station to start taking some measurements and take some pictures to allow this guy to put together a plan and start, in this case, a scale drawing of exactly what that station was. Now, once you commit to build, you're going to decide how you're going to build it. In this case, the Romanesque required brownstone and granite, which are blocks, and there's no commercially available building material to do this. So you're now committed to scratch building. One of the easiest ways to make blocks, and it ain't that easy, is to make resin castings. You start with a mold. You then apply urethane rubber to the master. And then from the urethane rubber mold, you cast resin panels. Then you put all the panels together and then paint, weather, etc. But you decide early on what level of detail. And if you were going to do this as a once in a lifetime project, yeah, you're going to try to take it to as far in detail as you can. So exactly to scale and based on lots of photographs and other information that you can gather. So you start carving the plaster with dental tools. You poured it in and you set it up in molds around it. You use a detailed drawing and then a photograph to get things exactly right. And you can see with a good sharp photograph how you copy this stonework and this brownstone arch. And yes, the guy who did all the photographing for me counted that there were 23 tapered arch bricks in that arch, and he made sure I had 23 blocks. So you can take it to the ultimate in detail as you're working through this. Later on, there were a few more compromises. Once you've got the master pattern, you make the urethane molds, you start casting, then you get it poured together. You clean the castings up and you join them as sub-assemblies, and then you file, fit, detail, engrave, sand, and fill in all the empties until you get a working wall castings for the exterior walls. You wash and you paint and you prime. You sand the back side so you get the walls as thin as possible and that the window openings are clear and sharp and ready to receive paint. Here I primered so that I could better see the surface, and then used filler putty, Squadron Greenworks, a lot of miracles, and then an engraving tool to finish off the mortar lines and to get the all the detail in it. Once you got the outside walls washed and you're getting ready to primer and paint those, you can start and break off and get into the interior walls made by a different concept. Here we use the old-fashioned sheet styrene. We cut, snap, fit, re-glue, butt joints together. And the key here is to make the styrene sheet with window openings that exactly match the exterior windows. The exterior walls are laid right next to it, and every step of the way, make sure that the interior windows line up absolutely perfectly with the exterior windows. Because what's going to happen is you're going to line the interior walls up with the exterior walls, and then the window glazing, which will be acrylic, will fit in between. So what you're doing is finishing exterior, interior, completely separately, and then you marry them together at the last minute. So as you're progressing, once you've got them painted and sanded and all the things put together, you don't want to have any surprises when you put them together. So interior walls are painted to match the right color for the interior. Then you add pre-painted window woodwork, and you miter them just as a carpenter does, glue them to the walls, give them a sealing coat of dull coat, and have completely finished interior walls and completely finished exterior walls. You start joining them together. This is the reason why you did so much cutting, fitting, and squaring and truing up. As you start gluing the individual pieces to the bottom, you want to start laying out the walls, and then you're going to build that sandwich, which is put some spacer strips in between the windows, and that will allow you to cut a lot of pieces of acetate. I use 1/10 of an inch, so I put 1/10 of an inch spacers, so that as you build up the wall section, you have an inner wall, you have a gap filled with acetate, making the window glazing, and then the outer wall, this is why it's so important to have all these window openings line up. Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, but you got to take your time with it, and it's worth the effort. And just before you put it all together, check that whatever you're using for window material, flooring material, will also fit neatly inside the openings. And so in case we'll see later, we have different types of flooring material that fit between the partitions. So you're going to make sure that that fits before you erect the walls. And it goes without saying, true, square, level, flat, plumb, all the things that old carpenter taught you over the back fence. It's all important. Once you've got the walls up, and again, being careful, because sometimes you won't be using gloves too, because you'll put a lot of fingerprints on that acetate glazing. Because the roof is so difficult, it's a hip roof, but there's 6 gables, and you want it to fit well. So there's a little bit of trial and error. I made a mock-up out of foam core, and then took full-size HO scale drawings that I'd made from my original plan and cut and pasted them to the outside of the foam core. So I've got mock-up walls here, but because all these little sections, they're all mounted loose, now you start fitting up the roof. The original roof is just cardstock, and you go back and forth with that, and trial and error, and trial and error, and trial and error. Once you have a very satisfactory roof, then you start cutting the roof overhang extensions the same way. And then a little bit of tape here holds those in place. So you're doing a lot of cutting and fitting. When you're satisfied that the roof is just as good as it can get, then you take the roof apart and you put each pattern over a piece of, this is gator foam, which is a stiffer foam core. It's got very hard waterproof paper on both sides. It stays very rigid, and it takes paint and stain and everything else that you're going to throw at it very well. Also, a note in passing here, I have put scribed lines on every piece of foam core because my shingles will be glued directly to this. It will be impossible for the human eye to put shingles on this roof and keep them straight unless you have some penciled in guidelines. So get out there with the drafting tool and draw parallel lines before you put your shingles on. You'll be glad you did later. Here's another shot of finishing the outside and the roof. Once it's all glued together, you want to fill in any gaps. And again, here's where the horizontal lines to guide your shingles come in handy. These were like 9 packets of shingles. Thank you, Steve Milley. I kept Rusty Stumps in business. They're actually S-scale shingles because that's what's scaled out to the slate roofing that was used on this HO scale building. The individual end pieces on the gables are actually freestanding. It looks as though they come up from the bottom wall, but because the roof has to be completely removable, these resin castings again, painted, finished, weathered, and ready. And that's the final assembly for those. Those go into the gables, as does the overhead and the central gable. And the roof edge is held up by some resin castings. Mr. Richardson loved this Egyptian format style. I don't know what an architect calls those, but those were his trademark support posts around the edge of the column. And again, be very careful about edge shingles, as somebody else mentioned earlier. You get a little drooping in there, and this has been handled a lot. So it's already started to droop on me, and I got to go back and poke those up again. You do a whole bunch of these. Again, that's make your own mold, make out of urethane, resin cast, all of these, because you're going to need a bunch whenever you have multiples in there, and even some loose pieces so that you can make a corner post out of that to complete your detail. So then you get the roof on, and then start adding various and sundry details, like all of the figures. You label the doors. We go back to the original drawing from 1887, and each door, you'll notice, has been labeled for its purposes: telegraph, ladies waiting area, general waiting area, and the ticket booth in there, and all the accoutrements that you add: baggage cart, steps, and figures, lots of luggage, and as people traveling back and forth. I staged the model in the 1950s, which is when I remember it best as a little kid. After you get the outside going, then it's time to work on the inside. Here's where many prototype photographs, if you can get them, are really worth their weight in gold. The interior trusses, fortunately, were still standing in the building, and these were tapered columns. So I had plenty of work right down to the, if you look hard, the nut bolt castings on the end of those, because you can't put a truss in tension, because wood doesn't like tension very well. But if you put a bolt drilled all the way through it, it's really happy. Models for the doors and for the color of the doors, even after all these years. The color of the paint on the interior is, again, this section was opened up after 50 or 60 years of being sealed over. And what they found inside was the true color that the station was painted originally. It was called Sunset Gold by Mr. Richardson. So he had his own ideas about what he was going to do. This pattern came from a flooring pattern, came from another one of his drawings for a similar station. And these are 2 by 4 foot marble tiles. On the side, Mr. Richardson also had a granite quarry, a brownstone quarry, and a marble quarry up in Vermont and New Hampshire. So he was not only designing the buildings, he was also supplying the building materials, kind of vertical integration, and he had the construction crew. Flooring is sometimes individual strip wood. It's just painted wood flooring, and this is in the immigrants' room, which is a lot less luxurious than the general waiting room with the ticket booth. In here, you've got a couple of stand-up toilet facilities off of the immigrants' room. On general waiting, you actually have real toilets. So you can take your modeling to the next level and really get it down to the sense. The baggage room has the usual baggage, plus it has a safe and other things that. Hard benches for the immigrants and some soft padded chairs for the ladies over in the ladies' waiting room. So keep the details going and make your roofs immovable. What's hard to see here is a very small LED. Jeff Bunza talked about making LED lampshades. These are 0402 lights. They run along the top of the rafter, running lengthwise here. And just before we assembled the walls, we remembered to run some number 36 magnet wire up through the walls, just like you would run house wiring through your walls. And then I can tap into that so I can run a series of half a dozen green lampshades with the LEDs in them to light up the interior. Jeremy, I hope you're inspired now to build Portland's Grand Trunk Station, because this is what is it. That interior was much more luxurious than this, and I'd love to see a model of that. So go for it, buddy. And finally, what makes the model successful is attention to detail. We have a door photographed from the original prototype. Then you start labeling them, the baggage, the immigrant entrance, which was separate than the general population. Redoing the truss work to try to get that as close as possible. And the little niceties inside the ladies' room, radiators and all the moldings that were appropriate there, and truss details. So once you get all the details worked out, you're ready for service. And again, conformance to the prototype, all the photos that we were able to take, you complete interior detailing so you can look in through the ticket window, ready to buy that big trip to New York City, probably twice a year for, quote, we're going shopping. That meant a long weekend in New York City, traveling by train, and just making a whole weekend of it. The little telegraph station where you'd send your Western Union telegrams. And what makes a model successful is when you not only are able to have people recognize it, but have the curator of the local museum start chasing you down. So when are you going to put this on exhibit up there? And that's endorsement enough. Any questions?
Yeah, Jim, question from YouTube from Human City Junction. How long did it take you to build this model?
Let's see. I started in 1964. I put it on a shelf. I did some drawings. I made some castings that the preliminary castings went to a NMRA show in the 90s. And then about 3 years ago, I was coming up on my 50th high school reunion, and my buddy said, "Hey, Murph, remember all those drawings and photos I sent you of the station? You're going to bring that model up to the reunion, aren't you?" Okay, I'm busted. I had 9 months from the time he told me that I wasn't going to get through the buffet line unless I had the model with me to put it together. So fortunately, I was almost retired at that point, and it was like 9 months of I don't know how many late nights putting it together, getting it ready to carry up to that reunion and put it on the shelf. He also put a tip jar next to it so that my classmates could contribute, throw a few bucks in the jar to contribute to the restoration of the original station, which fortunately is still standing. And they're going to try to hope to turn it into a community center.
Beautiful model.
Jim, I didn't hear you mention the brick flooring on the outside of the building.
Oh, goodness.
The herringbone flooring?
Yeah. I'm going to do this just briefly. And I think one of the unique features of the model itself, and I don't know if I can show you the all around the outside of the building on the ground was herringbone brick. And earlier on, I saw, was it up in Portland, Maine, where they used ballast stones?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, that was Portland, Jim.
That was in Portland, where they were paving. Let's see. I'm wondering if this will show it enough. Okay, that's the decking around the outside. Just let me look for one more photo, and I think I can find. All right, just gotta move this. Close that, and I've got it right here. The think of that models. All right. And look down on top of it, right? So my friend Dan Fisher, a man even more intense than I am, wanted herringbone brick in HO scale. So he took a piece of styrene and carved, I think this is, might show it here. Yep, almost got it. Carved herringbone brick in HO scale, because he is a structural engineer and an architect. Here we are.
So,
and
Jim, stop. You're sharing your PowerPoint application to us?
Yes.
So we're not seeing anything else you're doing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me show you.
Wait, just a second. Just stop sharing. Click on stop share up at the top.
Okay. You
stop
want
sharing.
Stop share.
All right. Okay. Now share. Click on share again.
All right. Share screen.
Now, tip for everybody: the upper left window. When you click on Zoom, the upper left window is your desktop. That's where you'll see the picture of you, etc., or probably me because I'm talking.
Yes.
Click on that, and we'll see what you see. Don't show us any porn.
Oh, well, I'll try not to. You know,
that way, as you go through and show things, we'll see what you're showing us. Go for it.
Okay, now I hit share. And now, are you seeing?
We're seeing a building interior.
With a building interior, and over on the side there, next to the baggage carts, are you seeing herringbone brick?
Yep.
Yes.
That is HO scale. Now, I needed 4 feet of brick to go all the way around 3 sides of the station. Okay, at the time, there was no true scale HO size brick, and Dan could tell me exactly what the measurements are. He took a scriber and he made a approximately 2-inch by 2-inch master pattern for me. I made a couple of urethane molds, and Bill and a couple of other people helped me just cast and cast and cast. So I was making 2-inch by 2-inch squares of herringbone brick, and then filing carefully, I was able to put them together, one on end and end and end and end. And I went 3 sides around the station, which is approximately 24 inches or so on one side, then 8 inches or 9 inches on the end. So I needed length of herringbone brick. So by having a friend who was able to carve this brick for me, make a master, and then resin casting, and then lots of painting, and even painting individual bricks so that they would show up as those. As the beauty of resin casting, once you get the molds made, you get a master, your molds will last for, 15, 20 times of casting. And if you wear the mold out, you make another one. So that's a good way to get a lot of multiple stuff in here. And then everything else is put all together. As I said.
One thing Jim didn't say is that Dan Fisher even did the end of the bricks. So when you laid the castings together, they integrated with each other.
Yeah. And he was accurate enough with his scriber that when you put it, it was very, very difficult. You might get a little bit of striation on that, but we're talking HO scale here.
Yep.
And all you took was a little pastel powder, and the joints just came out magically. It was a beauty to see. So
yeah, I was with Jim for a lot of this project. He's kind of my modeling partner, and it was an impressive project to watch him put this thing together.
And some occasional frustrating moments, but
nah.
And then it's like, yeah, just carry it off to a model contest, and it's been that was a help towards my AP for structures. Anyway, so it was well worth the 9 months straight of god awful late nights to put it together.
Wow, that's to say it's fantastic is an understatement. Holy mackerel, that's unbelievable. Are there any questions? Going once, twice. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim. That's very much appreciate you sharing that. That's some incredible detail work you've got there.
A lot of fun.
All right. Next up, we have Bill Davis.
That's a heck of a follow. If I could act the follow, I'll tell you.
I know.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let me start off with the share screen up, I guess. Desktop. Is that what I want? Yeah. Sure. There you go. Okay. Well, this is just a picture I pulled off the Louisiana Historical Railroads Facebook page. It's part of the Green Brothers quarry company. I love quarry railroads, so that's the thing. So I'm going to share a couple models that I've recently finished. And before I bring anything up here, one of them is a Tom York conversion kit that was designed to make a die-cast pickup truck into a moving van. And so I found an international, about a 1940s international truck body. So I used that for the cab part of it, and then the rest of it's Tom's kit. But Tom did a model of it, and he put a extra load in the back of the truck. So I carved off the lift gate in the back and put it down and added an extra load to mine as well. I also bit it so that it looked like it was so overloaded that the back springs were really well compressed. And the kind of the story I did for this model was that it broke down because the international truck.
I just wanted to correct you. We're looking at engine number 72.
Yeah, I know. I know. I haven't got to the pictures yet. And so the truck had a really nice engine inside that, so I muddled the hood open, and the interior was pretty nice. So I muddled the door open, and the story kind of like the truck is broken down, and the guys are going to get help. So that's the deal. So let me correct this. So this is the truck. That's the international front end there. And Jay Carter was my boss in California, was also my buddy who I went to all the concerts with and stuff like this. So I named it in honor of him. Although he lives in California, it's nowhere near the Southeast. But this is all resin casting back here. And the front part here is the die cast truck part of it. So this is the extra load in the back. That's a piece of foam that I carved and then painted it white. And then Jack Juddle's always talked about doing tea bag stuff. And so I've been playing around with tea bags. And so I took a tea bag and took it all apart and wrapped it up as a canvas covering for this extra load, and then stole some of my wife's thread and tied it to the back of the truck. And so that's the look there of having this truck is so loaded that they had to put part of it in the back and tie it as a bundle. And when Tom designed the kit, this tailgate part here was actually closed, but I carved that all off the kit, added new hinges and things, and then made a new tailgate in the back here. This is just the other side of the truck. It had a side door. I replaced the cast on hinges with the side door. Had a heck of a time trying to paint the yellow reflectors, only to find out they didn't have reflectors in those days. But anyway, and then Dylan had this kit, as you know, of the Junkyard Dog. I built one of the kits, and then I decided I wanted to build a standard gauge version. So I bought a second kit from Dylan. And I had enough parts left over, so I built this freelance little critter here. And the idea of the paint scheme on the thing is that it is an old engine that my Cornerstone Rock Company bought, and they dragged it back to their property and simply slapped their name on the side of it and put it to work. And so it's desperately need to get the back shop into a paint shop to be repainted. I did most of this, the weathering here, with using salt and using hairspray, and built the layers of paint up that way, and then using an eraser to remove the paint from it. And that's how you get the multicolors showing through, some of primer showing through, some of rust showing through. On the frame part down in here, I actually did it with chalks, and then using water, streak the chalk so it looks like the things are running down off of it. This is the back. I intentionally made the windows very dirty because every quarry locomotive I've ever seen has very, very dirty windows in them. And you'll also notice I did the streaking back here. A couple of pockets was scratch built, as was the lights. There's a certain friend of mine who's going to put some LED lights in this thing so the lights light up and things soon. Soon as I find another trolley mechanism to power it, since Bachmann no longer sells those. And final picture shows the other side of the thing. It's a freelance engine, but it's got a lot of Alco features in it. That's why all the soot and stuff like this off the smoke. If you ever seen an Alco diesel run, Becker Sand and Gravel loved Alco diesels, and every video I've seen of Becker Sand and Gravel, there's just black smoke just pouring out of these locomotives. And so that's the last picture here. Once again, I have more of that streaking the chalk effect to get the runoff look and things. So that's pretty much it, guys. It was just a quick show and tell. Any questions?
What do you mean just? That stuff's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Bill? All right.
Could you fit a Stanton drive under that?
I guess I could do that. The thing is designed to be use a Bachmann trolley mechanism. I know I can buy one off of eBay, but I hate to buy a whole trolley for just wanting the mechanisms. And of course, there's been 50,000 ON30 and ON3 models built using that trolley mechanism. as critters. And Bachman, if they're smart, will get that thing back in their line again, because I'm sure there's tons of people who are looking for those trolley mechanisms right now.
Yeah, but you built this as standard gauge?
No, this is narrow gauge.
Narrow
I have
gauge, okay.
I have another one in process here that is the standard gauge version, but I had enough parts left over, like I said, from the second kit that I bought from Dylan to build this critter. Like the hood is freelance, but it's cut kind of a lot of a Davenport look to it. I don't know where.
A lot like
I guess
a wood come.
It's maybe. Like I said, I didn't really try to go for anybody's real look. I just kind of created it.
That's what you call mechanics, grab whatever parts you can get and make something run.
That's it. Yep. One other thing I'll say about it here is you'll notice that down under the doors, there's a lot of seepage from oil and grease. I use the MIG weathering paints for that. A lot of the stuff I use is actually from military modelers and other kind of hobby modelers than railroad stuff. Matter of fact, there is no railroad colors in this entire model.
Now, do you add sound to your equipment or no?
I'm not a big fan of sound. It usually annoys me, but you never know. That same guy that's going to do the lights might slap a sound unit in this thing. I don't know. I'll have to see what he's got planned.
You know, that's what the F8 key is for, to mute the thing.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not much on running trains. I'm more in building them than running them. So, but you know, most everything I have is just straight DC at this point. I'm a big fan of battery. I just haven't made the jump into doing it. But I got a lot of my friends have switched to battery, and they're very happy with that move. So I'm kind of thinking that direction. The problem is I like little critters, and I don't like the concept of having follow-on cars. So that's kind of delayed me from doing that kind of stuff.
I have to introduce you to a friend of mine. He has battery powered things of this size without a follow along car.
Yeah, I have a friend in California when I used to live in California. This is back in 2011, and he does ON30, and he's actually got battery powered engines like the Bachmann Climax or the Bachmann Shea, and it's all in the tenders. So I know it can be done.
So is that the HO Bernie mechanism you need?
No, I need the ON30 one.
ON30 trolley mechanism.
Yeah,
ON30 trolley, because those are both available on Bachmann's parts site, by the way.
Well, but the problem is I know that, but the problem is the ON30 one has been sold out. So you can only buy part of it, and you can get the wheels, you can get the frame block, but you can't get the motor and stuff. And so that's the problem. Like I said, there's been so many of the critters built based around that mechanism. Tom York is a huge fan of using that mechanism to build critters, and he's built umpteen of them.
Yep, $45 for a Stanton drive, you'd be off and running.
Well, I might have to think about that. It might be a good idea.
I wonder, does anybody have a good contact for Tom York? I think he'd be great to have on the show.
Yep,
Dylan did.
I can do it.
Okay.
Yep, I know Tom's info.
All right.
I can get that to you, Jim. I know that's not Jim talking, but I can get that to you, Jim.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I've come across his kits from time to time and just been fascinated by what he's done, and I think it'd be great to have him on here.
Well,
Yeah,
you guys may remember that when I did my talk back in September, that one of the biggest influences to my modeling was when I met Tom York in '75 at the Whistle Stop in Pasadena.
Yeah.
He radically changed my whole concept of modeling, weathering, painting, everything. The man is just a phenomenal artist. He's a phenomenal creative guy. I would go to his house and spend a couple hours out at his house, 3 hours out at his house. I'd leave his house, my head would be just spinning from the ideas that just rolled off the top of his head. Unbelievable, unbelievable talented guy. And stuff. Yeah, I will give you the information, Jim, because he would be a good guest.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Well, Bill, I think you did a damn fine job backing up Jim.
Yeah. I feel a little bit like the Grateful Dead. There's a great story about the Grateful Dead, is that they played Monterey Pop Festival. The only problem is the Who played before them and Hendrix played after them. So it's quite a sandwich spot to be in. So that's kind of like following Jim. But anyway.
All right.
Finish, unshare your screen now. There we go.
All righty. So we'll go back to Clark. Clark, are you ready? Or did he fall asleep on us?
No, well, Jesus, I didn't know I had to be born in 1817 to learn anything. And I also didn't know I had to wait 50 years to do any kind of modeling. You just start and then it's 50. For all you new guys to the hobby, that's not how it is. Trust me. So I'm going to show something really quick because, you know, you guys always complain I talk along. Holy crap. So this is Bob. I went to Bob Farquhar's dairy company. Bob, I didn't know you owned the Farquhars.
Oh, I know. It's great.
Yeah. And this is usually a thing of milk. And I cut them up into pieces. Now, this is a method that a friend of mine, I can actually say a friend, Alan McClellan, when we did Modeling with the Masters, he did this as a little short clinic, and it's always stuck with me. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna take these waxed inside cardboard pieces out of the milk carton. You're gonna cut it up into strips or whatever you're doing. I'm building a cement loading dock. So I got my cardboard strips and I just used tape, and then I put the tape piece on and I just tape it down with regular cellophane magic tape or whatever. Once I got it nice and square, you do have to check this with a square, you fill it full of hydrocal. Now, one of the real tricks with this, and this is something that Alan taught me, Alan McClellan was in the cement business. And he showed our clinic actually, how to get fantastic looking crackle that comes out in, there's an actual term for it and I've forgotten it. It's been so long since I've been waiting to do this. What you do basically is put just play sand in some of the corners, a little bit of the mold, and just take your finger, wet it a little bit and pour the sand in, and then gently pour in your hydrocal. And then after, when it's all dry, you pop it out. So here's my hunk of hydrocal. It's nice and hard, and you can see here the spackling, or where some of the sand is. Now, when you rub that off, that sand will actually fall out, and it is to represent the thaw and cracking of cement when ice and water get in there in the northern parts of the world, where we have ice and snow. And so this is the start of it, and then I'll sand it up a little bit, and since it's my build, I will give a report as it goes along. But that's just a quick little thing. You don't have to be born in 1948. You don't have to wait 60 years to do it. You can do this whole thing in about 3 hours. All right, that's it. Thanks for coming out. We love what you do, whatever it is you do.
You know, Farquhar's Dairy there is, I think, Little Current. Is that Little Current?
Espanola, actually.
What's Espanola? Okay.
I was down there one time. And the lady, Mrs. Farquhar, actually lived across the street from me.
So I bought a bunch of the coffee creamers with Farquhar's Dairy, And I give them to the friends when they're visiting in the house and say, where'd you get those? Have them made.
Well, if you need more, let me know. I'll send you some.
So Clark, one thing I've done when I've done doing concrete foundations like that is laid up styrene strips. So as like they're forming boards.
Right.
And then when I cast it, you get that forming board effect.
Yes, and you can do the same thing actually with the wax paper and the.
Yes, yeah, you could, yeah.
And, you know, if you want to get an indentation, one of the things that Alan did, he showed us how to build tunnel portals with this method. And he actually just would glue on, you know, if you wanted it to be indented, you glue on more layers of the cardboard, and we just used a little bit of glue and slapped them on, and boy, they came out really well. The nice thing about this, I do the plastic as well for something that I need it to be more, I'll say, rigid in dimensions, but for this you know, piece, as long as it's roughly square and that, and for a cement loading dock, it works really well. And so it's quick and dirty and cheap, and boy.
Well, I think a nice thing about nice thing about what you've done there, that wax probably works real well for peeling off, because one of the issues you don't run into with the styrene or even the wood strips is that you sometimes have trouble getting them peeled off there unless you've done some kind of sealant.
Yeah, no,
this wax acts as a sealant. That's a good idea. I never thought about using the milk carton material for that. That's a really good idea.
Just pops right off.
Yep, that's a great idea.
So could I use that to make a stone foundation and carve stone in it, for example?
Absolutely, sure.
Sure, yep.
I was thinking about, because I'm doing the O-scale Gray Street house, and I was thinking I want to do a foundation, and that seems like a pretty simple way to do it.
It is, and just make sure that you pop it out fairly early so that you can, if you want to start right away and do the engraving for the bricks. I find the hydrocal, even if you wet it and you go back at it, it's pretty tough material.
Once it dries, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something that they said to drip water in it while you're carving it or something like that.
Well, yeah, guys will even soak it, but it does become, it's rock, man. It's really rock.
You'd be better using dental plaster.
Yeah, dental plaster or
plaster of Paris.
Plaster. Well, I'm not a big fan of plaster of Paris, but even that Durarock 90, I think it is.
Gypsum.
Yeah, drywall mud.
Yeah, will work.
Yeah, it works.
It's not quite as hard as, you know, hydrocal is like my head.
So
hey, don't laugh so fast, you guys.
Everybody take notice that he admitted that.
The reason we're laughing is we're agreeing that we have the same problem.
All right, guys, hold it. Chris, have you got anybody else on your list?
This is the last one.
Okay. Well, Chris, you did a great job tonight. I commend you, and guys that presented tonight, you did fantastic. Thank you all so very much. Pete Steinmetz is going to come back for next featured modeler on Wednesday. He's going to talk about weathering with pan pastels. So that ought to really be interesting. And we've got a lot of special features again. And I hope you'll come back to join us. Hope you learned something tonight and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so very much. And we are